What if, the dragon that changed everything? Author, ErogonWolf. A dragon floated through the infinite void, drifting into the very space where Veldanava was creating the world. Just as the creator put the finishing touches on his work, a deal was made. Seals were placed, and a new world awaited exploration. Eons later, a certain slime and his manas began to examine the void itself. Ciel discovered a mysterious door that Veldanava had sealed shut, viewing it as a challenge to overcome. However, unknown to her, the world beyond that door holds a power even stronger than her master. What chaos will be unleashed when the gate is finally opened? Chapter 43, Undesired Truths. After the meeting with the Emperor and the Empress Dowager, Rosaline walked out of the room with the Empress Dowager just as Jinsha walked over. I will be with Lady Rosaline for the rest of today, so you can handle the rest of your tasks, Jinsha, said the Empress Dowager. Of course, my lady, said Jinsha as he entered the room with the Emperor while Rosaline and the Empress Dowager walked off. As Jinsha walked in, he noticed the Emperor's expression. What happened? The Emperor rubbed his brow. I won't go into the fine details, but she knows about you and your station, yet she is willing to keep quiet about it entirely. A cold sweat hit Jinsha. I see. And on top of that, said the Emperor, apparently I have a niece in the outer court. Are you serious? Said Jinsha. Is there any proof? Not physical evidence yet, said the Emperor, but I think that is why my mother is around Rosaline at the moment, to find out. That girl is definitely odd, said Jinsha. The Emperor smirked slightly. Speaking of girls, how is that apothecary you are interested in doing? Jinsha gasped in surprise. She is doing fine, and it is not like that. The Emperor laughed with renewed vigor. Regardless, this coming garden party is going to be interesting. On the way to one of the gardens in the outer court, Rosaline and the Empress Dowager had a small conversation, agreeing that Rosaline could address her as Anshi. When they arrived, a small assortment of drinks and snacks was waiting for them. Since it was near noon, I thought you and I would have a small party to get better acquainted with each other, said Anshi. It would be an honor, my lady, said Rosaline as they sat down in clear view of everyone in the garden. After a few minutes of light conversation, Koneko walked up. My lady, said Koneko, I ran into a small issue with the target, so I returned. Very well, said Rosaline. Forgive my servant's candor, Lady Anshi. It is fine, said Anshi. But what is this target she spoke of? The lady in question during our conversation with the Emperor, Rosaline said quietly, ensuring only the two of them could hear. I see, said Anshi. So Koneko, what was the issue? Asked Rosaline. I was stopped by a military officer, said Koneko, by the name of Laken. Laken, said Anshi. That is odd. You know of him? Asked Rosaline. Yes, he is our nation's chief strategist, said Anshi. But he is a bit of an eccentric. How interesting, said Rosaline. Anshi thought to herself, I cannot tell under her mask, but by her tone she is slightly intrigued. By the way, Anshi continued, you never explained why your servant Koneko has those features. She gestured to Koneko's cat ears and tail. I forgot to explain that, said Rosaline. Remember how I explained the demi-humans and magical creatures beyond the veil? Anshi nodded, and with Rosaline's permission, Koneko sat beside her. Some, like my servants here, can be broken down from their general classification into more specific ones, said Rosaline. She patted her lap, and Koneko rested her head on Rosaline's lap. For example, Koneko here is a necomata, or a cat demon, and this is her reward for her work. Rosaline stroked her head softly. Aisha, the blonde-haired one behind me, is considered a demonoid because she was once human. Rosaline continued, Riaz, the redhead, is the only pure demon here. I see, said Anshi. If she had not explained her abilities earlier, she would look like an ordinary noble praising her subordinates. And your last subordinate? Aquino's race is slightly different, said Rosaline. I do not know the equivalent word around here, but her race is Nephilim, a union of human and angel. However, she fell and gained some devilish features. And she raised an eyebrow, seeing only a beautiful young lady. Really? Aquino walked behind Rosaline and placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Forgive me for speaking out of turn, but she means my penchant for inflicting punishment is highly unorthodox. Oh, said Anshi. After the small gathering, Lady Anshi, Rosaline, and their attendants went to an unoccupied pavilion. This is where the former emperor resided in his later years until his death, said Anshi. Did he die here? I asked Rosaline as they reached a room covered in dust, while the rest of the building remained spotless. Yes, said Anshi. After that, no one was allowed into this room. Rosaline smiled slightly. Is something interesting? Anshi asked. Nothing, just that the order to leave the room untouched helps me prove what I told you about, perfectly. Under her mask, Rosaline opened her other eyes to look into the room, finding exactly what she was searching for. Very well, said Anshi. As she closed and reopened her eyes, Rosaline was standing directly in front of her. What are you? Anshi gasped. Currently, you do not have the ability to see what I see, said Rosaline. For this next part, I would like you to witness it. Do you agree to this request? Anshi sighed. What do you need? A chair for you, and your permission to do what I must, said Rosaline with a smile. Very well, Anshi said. She waved her hand, and an attendant retrieved a chair from another room, placing it near the former emperor's room. Anshi sat down. Now, close your eyes, Rosaline instructed. Anshi complied, and Rosaline touched her forehead against Anshi's. Now, think about opening your eyes. When Anshi opened them, she saw her own face from the outside. What is this? She asked, watching her own body say the words. To put it simply, you are sharing my sight for a short while, said Rosaline as she stood up. Just watch for now, all right? Anshi nodded. And whatever he says, do not take it to heart, Rosaline added. What does she mean by that? Anshi thought. Rosaline walked toward the open room. Inside, an amalgamation of the former emperor's spirit phased between different times in his life. The most prominent forms were a handsome young man and a wrinkled, disheveled elder. Lady Anshi, this conversation is just between you and me, Rosaline's voice echoed in Anshi's mind without her mouth moving. It is called thought communication. Thank you, Anshi thought back. I might have opened my real eyes if you had not done this. I figured as much, said Rosaline. Please keep our talking to a minimum while I deal with him. Rosaline entered the room and stopped, though her inner sight remained fixed on the spirit. Only Anshi and Rosaline could hear what followed. Rosaline adopted the exact voice of the Empress Regnant. Dear, I have a question for you, Rosaline said, perfectly mimicking the Empress Regnant. The former emperor looked toward her. What do you want to know, mother? Is she mimicking her voice, or is it something else? Anshi wondered. I recall a baby girl being banished from the rear palace many years ago, Rosaline said. Was she not yours? The former emperor hung his head low. She was, but I wanted to protect her from my own dark impulses. That was the only way I thought I could keep her safe. I made sure later that she was protected and happy. And how was that, dear? Rosaline asked. I asked Shisho to marry her in exchange for fulfilling a request of his, said the former emperor. After that, they had a child together named Shisui. Did he make his request, dear? Asked Rosaline. He asked that his former fiancée be returned to him, said the former emperor. After that, his form began to fade. That is all we are going to get, but I could probe for physical evidence if you wish, Rosaline communicated to Anshi. Do it, Anshi replied. If the child is still alive, we must have proof. Rosaline nodded. Dear, did you give your daughter anything as proof of her lineage? An elegant silver phoenix hairpin with amethyst jewels in its wings, said the former emperor as his spirit faded completely. Rosaline closed her eyes, severing the connection to Anshi. As Rosaline left the room, Anshi opened her physical eyes. "How do you feel?" Rosaline asked. "Perplexed," said Anshi. She glanced at the attendants. "All of you, leave us for a moment." The attendants and Rosaline's subordinates walked to the end of the hall. "I can understand that," Rosaline said softly. "Why did he take such extreme measures with his own daughter?" Anshi asked, trying to maintain her composure despite her rising anger. "I cannot speak for his mind," said Rosaline, "but I can understand his conflict as a father." "Explain," Anshi said sternly. "I do not know much about the former emperor, but I have heard of his unhealthy obsession with younger women," Rosaline said calmly. He knew that as his daughter grew older, his own dark nature would endanger her. Cruel as his actions were, sending her away was the only way he knew to protect her from himself. Anshi's face was a mixture of shock and terror at the realization. If what Rosaline said was true, he had taken a drastic action to shield his child from his own monstrous flaws. "I see," Anshi said quietly. She stood up from her chair as the attendants returned. "Then we will continue as planned with the garden party." As she walked away, she added, "You know how to get to Jincha's residence, correct?" "Yes, I do," said Rosaline, giving a slight bow. Toward the end of the day, Rosaline returned to Jincha's residence and went straight to her room to rest. "What happened?" Jincha asked. "Let us just say," Riaz replied, "that it is for certain ears only." Chapter 44, Fox and Tanuki. For the following 3 days, Rosaline went to the central gardens alone while her subordinates carried out their own tasks. She sat in a small, open gazebo in full view of everyone. How odd. Are people afraid of me, or just cautious around someone new? Nearly everyone gave the building a wide berth. "A shame," she muttered. "I have no one to talk to." "That is truly a shame," said a man walking straight toward the gazebo. "But I think I know the reason behind it." Rosaline glanced at him, seeing a plump, middle-aged man in his 60s whose smiling eyes revealed nothing of his true intentions. "And why is that?" she asked. "Your beauty," said the man. "If they admire you and you are destined for the rear palace, they would never see you again, and they certainly do not want to earn the emperor's ire." Rosaline burst into genuine laughter. "I forgot that my looks could make it so hard for people to approach me." "I see you find my statement amusing," the man said calmly. "May I ask your name?" "Forgive my late introduction," Rosaline said, standing up and bowing gracefully. "My name is Rosaline." For someone to bow like this, the man thought, she already knows who I am. "My name is Shisho," he said, returning the bow. They both sat down and engaged in small talk until Shisho asked, "So, Lady Rosaline, do you have any children?" Rosaline smiled, but when she spoke, she switched from her standard female voice to a deep male tone. 3. 2 girls and a boy. Shisho looked visibly startled before Rosaline returned to her normal voice. "What, were you expecting something else?" "I simply did not expect that voice from someone who looks like you," Shisho said, recovering his composure. "I have a daughter who will most likely join the rear palace within the year." "How surprising," said Rosaline. "I am surprised he can lie so easily about his own daughters." "Well, I have other duties to attend to, Lady Rosaline," Shisho said, rising to leave. "It was an honor to speak with you." Rosaline bowed as he left and sat back down. Throughout their conversation, 2 people had been watching, one openly, the other covertly. How interesting she is, thought Lacan from the 2nd floor of a nearby building. He realized she had been reading Shisho and his motives the entire time. She moves like a warrior who has survived countless battles. Fascinating. "What do you mean, sir?" asked a fellow officer standing near Lacan. "It is nothing," Lacan dismissed him, turning away. "Maybe tomorrow." Down below, Gaoshin walked toward Rosaline. What is it, Gaoshin? Rosaline asked, looking bored. There has been a complaint from the military wing, Gaoshin reported. About what? We should talk somewhere more private, Gaoshin suggested. Rosaline sighed. All right. A few minutes later, they reached a private room where Koneko was sitting in a chair with a slight pout. So, what happened? Rosaline asked, glancing at Gaoshin. A few officials spotted her on the roofs of several buildings in the military wing, Gaoshin explained. They assumed she was spying and reported it. Let me guess, Rosaline said with a sigh. Once you realized who it was, you came to get me. Yes, Gaoshin admitted. Rosaline stepped in front of Koneko. Why did you follow her from the rooftops instead of using the walkways? Because she would have spotted me on the ground, Koneko sulked. I did not expect the guards to see me. Well, Rosaline said, you are heading to the rear palace to help Rias and Aquino set up the Pearl Pavilion. That should quiet their complaints, correct? Yes, that should work, Gaoshin agreed. Koneko nodded, and Rosaline gave her a gentle chop on the head. Did you let yourself get seen on purpose? Koneko simply whistled quietly. Rosaline sighed as they left the room and headed back to Jincha's residence as afternoon approached. I see you returned early today, Suiren greeted them. I had to deal with an unexpected situation, Rosaline said, throwing a subtle glance at Koneko. I grew bored and decided to return. I see, said Suiren. Will you be having a meal tonight? Not tonight, Rosaline replied. And Koneko will be heading to the rear palace in the morning. And Miss Aisha? Suiren asked. She will be coming with me tomorrow, said Rosaline. Very well then, Suiren bowed as Rosaline walked to her room. Meanwhile, in Jincha's office, Gaoshin delivered his report on Rosaline's actions over the last 2 days. She mostly stayed in the central gardens, and most people kept their distance, Gaoshin reported. However, Master Shisho made contact with her today. What did they talk about? Jincha asked. It seemed like ordinary small talk at first. But toward the end, Shisho asked something, and Rosaline's response appeared to startle him. Jincha raised an eyebrow. How so? I was too far away to hear her voice, Gaoshin explained, but Shisho mentioned his daughter. I believe Rosaline smirked briefly before returning to her composure. Wait, how could you hear Shisho but not Rosaline? Jincha asked. Her back was turned to me, but I could read Shisho's lips, Gaoshin replied. I see, Jincha said. She is definitely an odd person. I would have to agree, said Gaoshin. The next morning, Rosaline and Aisha walked back to the central garden. Aisha carried a pitcher and 2 glass cups. Jincha saw them leave and approached Suiren. Suiren, what drink did they take to the garden? I believe it was just fruit juice, Suiren answered. Jincha paused as a thought hit him. Gaoshin, has Rosaline or any of her attendants eaten or drunk anything since they arrived? Now that you mention it, Gaoshin said, she has not consumed anything while sitting at the gazebo for the past 3 days. Jincha looked startled just as Koneko appeared behind him, poking him in the back and causing him to jump. Koneko! What are you doing here? I thought you were already in the rear palace. I came to get Rosaline's laundry, Koneko said plainly. And how did you get in here? Jincha asked. Koneko looked away silently. Suddenly, a guard ran up, breathless. Master Jincha! A palace lady jumped over the motan. The guard cut himself off as he spotted Koneko. Hey, that is her! Jincha looked at Koneko, who turned her head, realizing she was in trouble again. Gaoshin, Jincha sighed. On it, Gaoshin said, stepping out. A few hours later, Gaoshin returned not with Rosaline, but with Rias. I could not retrieve Rosaline, but she told me to let Rias handle it. Very well, Jincha said. He scolded Koneko once more, reiterating the palace rules. I just wanted to get her dirty clothes, Koneko pouted as Rias tapped her lightly on the head. You still have to follow the rules, Rias scolded her softly. But since Jinsha sighed. Very well. It cannot be that much. He dismissed the guards and led them to Rosialine's room. Inside, clothes were strewn across the floor in complete disarray. What happened here? Rosialine happened, Rias said flatly. Koneko nodded in agreement and began gathering the garments. She has little to no sense of organization when it comes to cleaning, Koneko noted. Make sure to leave the damaged garment and the overgarment for the garden party, Rias instructed. Jinsha paused. Damaged garment. Koneko picked up a dress and held it up. The back section was shredded in 2 clean slits. What on earth happened to this? Jinsha asked, bewildered. You will understand when the garden party happens, Rias said with a smile. Jinsha let out a long sigh. Then please explain one thing to me. What would you like to know? Rias asked. I noticed that neither you nor your lady have eaten since arriving at my residence, Jinsha said. Is that normal? Oh, we simply forgot, but... Rias hesitated. It should be fine to explain that part, Rias, Koneko chimed in. You are right, Rias agreed. To answer your question, Master Jinsha, we do not need to eat. I do not understand, Jinsha said. When we achieve a certain level of power and energy, we lose many natural biological needs, Rias explained. We no longer require food or sleep, and we even lose the ability to procreate. Oh, Jinsha murmured. So that is why Rosialine said she cannot have children. That afternoon in the rear palace, Akino walked toward the Jade Pavilion. Upon entering, she was greeted by a tall, striking lady-in-waiting in her late teens with dark blue eyes and long black hair styled in an elegant updo. Greetings, my name is Alan, the lady-in-waiting said with a polite bow. Likewise, my name is Akino, she replied. I believe we have a meeting with the precious consort. Yes, but I assume the head lady-in-waiting of your pavilion would be attending, Alan noted. She was scheduled to, Akino explained, but an unexpected matter arose outside the rear palace that required her attention. Follow me, Alan said. Our lady is waiting. Akino followed Alan into the parlor where Lady Gyokuyu and her attendants were gathered. Greetings, Lady Gyokuyu, Akino said. My name is Akino. Please forgive our head lady-in-waiting for her absence. It is quite fine, said Lady Gyokuyu, her jade-green eyes warm beneath her salmon-pink hair and turquoise shawl. May I ask what called her away? Akino explained how Koneko had leapt over the palace wall and moat just to retrieve Rosialine's laundry, keeping the story light and omitted specific names. Lady Gyokuyu burst into laughter. Forgive me, but that is simply remarkable. My lady, spoke up Mao Mao, a short girl with dark green hair bound in blue ribbons and a bandage wrapped around her left forearm. It might be possible, considering what I witnessed in the laundry area earlier. What do you mean, Mao Mao? Asked Gyokuyu. She lifted 3 heavy wooden tubs filled with water single-handedly just to look underneath them, Mao Mao said dryly. And she did not even break a sweat. My word, Lady Gyokuyu marveled. So, what brings you to us today, Akino? Akino glanced at the gathered staff. Are these all the ladies-in-waiting and servants who serve under you? Yes, they are, Gyokuyu confirmed. Akino pulled out a small device resembling a compass. I simply need to walk past everyone. If this device reacts, I will issue a special bracelet for that person to wear. To put it simply, this device detects excess life energy or mana escaping the body. If someone with high output comes into direct contact with my lady, it could cause severe complications. Oh dear, please proceed, Gyokuyu urged. Akino walked through the room as the needle on the reader spun wildly, eventually settling and pointing directly at Mao Mao. Well, Akino said softly. It appears we have someone here with an unusual energy trace. Is she in danger? Gyokuyu asked anxiously. She will be perfectly fine, but I need to ask her a few questions in private, Aquino requested. Hong Nyang, stay behind so there is no misconduct, Gyokuyu instructed her head lady in waiting. Yes, my lady, replied Hong Nyang, a composed woman in her 30s. Once the room cleared, leaving only Aquino, Hong Nyang, and Mao Mao, Aquino turned to the young apothecary. How old are you? 19, Mao Mao answered, finding the question unexpected. Good, that rules out the most dangerous condition, Aquino said with relief. How dangerous? Hong Nyang inquired. Fatal, Aquino stated plainly. But she is past the vulnerable age range. Now to determine which of the remaining traits she possesses. What do you need me to do? Mao Mao asked. I will release a small fraction of my energy. If you feel anything unusual, tell me immediately. Something has already happened, Mao Mao noted calmly. Explain, Aquino urged. I do not know what it is, but when I look at you and the white-haired girl with cat ears, I see a colored haze around you both, Mao Mao described. Hers was white with hints of blue. Yours is yellow with silver and black. Aquino smiled warmly. I see. You possess a rare natural trait known as aurasight, which makes you far more sensitive to ambient mana. So all she needs is the bracelet? Hong Nyang asked, and Aquino handed the band to Mao Mao. One important rule, Aquino warned. When your vision activates, do not look directly at our mistress unless you wish to risk permanent blindness. Mao Mao nodded thoughtfully. Understood, my lady. My work here is complete, Aquino said. I will take my leave. Thank you for your time, Lady Aquino, Hong Nyang bowed. I will see you both at the garden party, Aquino called back as she departed. Mao Mao watched her leave. If she is only the second lady in waiting, I wonder what the rest of the Pearl Pavilion is like. Hong Nyang lightly tapped Mao Mao on the head. Manners, Mao Mao. Earlier that morning, after leaving Jincha's residence, Rosaline made her way toward the central gardens. Before reaching the gazebo, she paused and turned to Aisha. Aisha, take these for a moment and stay nearby to ensure we are not disturbed, Rosaline said, handing over the pitcher and glass cups. Yes, my lady, Aisha replied. Rosaline stepped into the gazebo, where a man was already seated. I hope you did not have to wait long, Sir Lacan. Lacan looked up with an easy smile. Not at all, I have only been here a few minutes. I was not sure when you would arrive. A complete lie, Rosaline thought, keeping her expression perfectly neutral. I see. I notice you brought drinks today, Lacan observed. As if you were expecting company. I heard you nearby yesterday, Rosaline replied. So I brought refreshment. And I see you brought a game board. Lacan chuckled. Indeed. What would you prefer, Go or Shogi? Rosaline sat opposite him. Your choice. Lacan set up a standard Go board. You may take the first move. What sort of drink did you bring? Rosaline placed her first piece down. Just grape juice. It has a lovely green tint, which is why I chose clear glass. And no food taster? Lacan asked, placing his stone. That is rather bold. I have no intention of harming anyone, Rosaline said, pouring 2 glasses and taking a sip from one. And poison is such an unrefined way to go. True, Lacan agreed, watching the board fill up. It really is a vibrant green. He took a drink as Rosaline set the pitcher between them. Her moves are remarkably bold yet deeply strategic, Lacan analyzed as they played. She possesses a military mind. You must be far older than your appearance suggests, he remarked. Rosaline paused mid-move before setting her stone down. Asking a lady her age is improper, she said smoothly. However, I will say this, compared to my true age, nearly everyone here is a child. So in your eyes, Lacan asked, placing a stone that brought him near victory, I am merely a child. Rosaline placed her final stone, unexpectedly turning the game and securing her win. Most people are children to me, but I never diminish their individuality. Lacan laughed heartily. It has been a long time since I was outmaneuvered like this. He studied her intently. She is no ordinary noble. Oddly enough, I can see her actual face through her mask, whereas most people appear to me as mere chess pieces or go stones. Her mind operates like a seasoned general. Shall we play another round, or switch games? He asked. Let us try shogi, Rosaline suggested. As they played, Lacan noticed something strange. Every few turns, his vision flickered as if reality itself distorted before smoothing out again right before Rosaline made her move. What is this? Her moves are optimal, but something feels off. Lacan deliberately set a trap, sacrificing a piece to lure her into opening her king's defense. The visual distortion grew more pronounced, but Rosaline ignored the bait entirely. What is this sensation? It is as if I saw several moves ahead, and then they vanished. Are you manipulating something? He asked directly. I have no idea what you mean, Rosaline replied with calm focus. Lacan executed a swift, decisive maneuver. This time, no distortion occurred, and he successfully captured her king piece. Rosaline let out a light laugh. It appears I lost this round. As she laughed, her mask shifted slightly, revealing a portion of her face that Lacan could clearly perceive. Fascinating. I can see her face clearly, just as I can with my daughter and her mother. It seems so, Lacan said, checking the time. Well, I must take my leave. I hope we can enjoy another match soon. As do I, Rosaline replied. Enjoy the garden party tomorrow. As Lacan walked away, Aisha returned to Rosaline's side and provided a brief summary of the energy readings in the rear palace, causing Rosaline to smile. A natural energy reader and a master strategist in the same palace, Rosaline mused. This is why humanity never fails to intrigue me. She stood up and made her way back to Jinsha's residence. Later that evening in a private conference room, the Emperor sat waiting as Lacan entered. Forgive me if I kept you waiting, Your Highness, Lacan said, bowing. Not at all, the Emperor replied. Give your report. Rosaline possesses extensive military and political tactical experience far beyond anyone in our court, Lacan reported seriously. She is vastly older and more experienced than her appearance indicates. I see, said the Emperor. Can she be trusted? Her ultimate motives remain unclear, Lacan answered. However, her requests thus far have been reasonable given her subordinate's capabilities. Attempting to restrict her movements within the palace will only prove futile. Have you deduced her ultimate plan? The Emperor asked. Regrettably, no, Your Majesty, Lacan admitted. Very well, the Emperor concluded. You are dismissed. Lacan bowed respectfully and exited the room. Chapter 45, The Garden Party. On the morning of the garden party, Jinsha left early to meet with the 4 high-ranking concubines. This time, Aisha left with him, leaving Rosaline alone with Sui Ren. Rosaline stood in the yard and looked to the sky. She was wearing the damaged underrobe without an overrobe, her mask, or her shawl when Sui Ren rushed out. My lady, why are you wearing such damaged and disheveled clothes? Asked Sui Ren. Oh Sui Ren, said Rosaline, I thought you were busy with your duties. It is not a problem. What do you mean? Said Sui Ren. Well, you will be the first to see them, said Rosaline as she outstretched her wings and tail. They aligned perfectly with the torn sections of her garments, staying well beneath the height of the outer walls. So, what do you think of them? They are dazzling and beautiful to the eyes, Sui Ren replied, though she found them equally intimidating. Forgive me, Sui Ren, said Rosaline, and thank you for putting up with me and my subordinates. It was no trouble at all, Sui Ren chuckled warmly. Our time here with the 5 of you was lively, to say the very least. They both laughed together over their shared experiences. Well, shouldn't you be heading to the garden party? Asked Sui Ren. I am going to make a surprising entrance, said Rosaline, pointing upward. Suiren tilted her head in confusion. At one of the gazebos in the rear palace, Lady Gyokuyu, her ladies-in-waiting, and Mao Mao were walking over, unaware that someone was already present. Greetings, Lady Gyokuyu, said a woman in a light blue dress with dark blue wave accents. You look as beautiful as always. Ah, Lady Rias, it is wonderful to see you again, said Lady Gyokuyu. You look radiant as well. Likewise, said Rias. And forgive us for the other day. Oh, it is fine, said Lady Gyokuyu. Lady Aquino explained everything and completed the task in your place. Well, that is good to hear, said Rias. By the way, asked Gyokuyu, why are you here instead of preparing for the party? Each of us for attendance will be accompanying one of the 4 high-ranking consorts, Rias explained. I see. I look forward to meeting the lady you serve, said Gyokuyu. Though I do not recall any news of a new consort entering the rear palace. Rias shook her head. Oh no, my lady will be an official assisting Master Jinsha. So this was the person meant to attend that meeting the other day, Mao Mao thought. Beauty-wise, she could easily be a high-ranking consort or courtesan. To serve someone else, her mistress must possess immense influence or even greater beauty. As Rias engaged the ladies-in-waiting in light conversation, she approached Mao Mao and caught a subtle scent she had not anticipated. Sulphur, Mao Mao whispered under her breath. Rias offered a slight smile. You have a sharp nose. Forgive me, my lady, Mao Mao said quickly. I am simply impressed that anyone could catch such a faint trace, Rias said, and Mao Mao nodded politely. After a few hours, Jinsha arrived, offered his usual greetings, and presented Mao Mao with a silver hairpin. Rias smiled at the gesture as Jinsha took his leave. Soon, the ceremonial drum sounded, signaling the start of the procession to the party. Back at Jinsha's residence, Rosaline suddenly vanished from Suiren's sight as though she had launched into the air. Miles above the palace, Rosaline floated comfortably, her wings fully extended and her tail dangling below. I cannot believe that old technique worked, Rosaline thought. The one-step to heaven method always felt like a joke, but it works perfectly to avoid causing a scene. She looked down toward the grounds. If memory serves, I will be introduced right after the music and swordsmanship, just before the feast. This will be entertaining. The garden party was in full swing. Dancers performed in harmony with the music while Mao Mao walked through the grounds. She spotted Rias standing with 3 others. She recognized Aquino and the cat-eared girl, but the blonde girl with green eyes was new to her. The blonde handed Rias an overcoat, a shawl, and a face mask bearing the same wave motif as Rias's outfit. Are those her mistress's garments? How unusual, Mao Mao pondered. Mao Mao? Yinghua asked. Is something wrong? No, just something curious about the group Lady Rias is with, Mao Mao replied. Curious how? Yinghua looked over. Wait, is that the girl you mentioned the other day? Yes, but I do not recognize the blonde, said Mao Mao. That is not surprising. She was likely accompanying their mistress this whole time, Yinghua noted. Remember, they mentioned their mistress was temporarily outside the rear palace. I see, Mao Mao acknowledged. Do you know which group she arrived with? I believe I spotted her with High Consort Lady Lishu's entourage, Yinghua said. Understood, Mao Mao said, continuing her walk around the venue. Several men were presenting hairpins to the ladies-in-waiting throughout the garden party. Mao Mao received one from an overly energetic official and another from Lady Lihua while the sword dance performance was underway. Afterward, the high-ranking consorts and their food tasters took their seats. Before we partake in today's feast, the Emperor announced, we have distinguished guests whose identities have not yet been formally revealed to everyone. They hail from beyond the veil, having arrived 15 years ago. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officials until the Emperor raised his hand for silence. So that is how he chooses to frame it, Lacan thought as the Emperor resumed speaking. From what they have shared, the Emperor paused briefly, they are not human. The whispering grew louder. My Emperor, Shisho spoke up, can we trust their claims? Why not see and hear for ourselves, replied the Emperor. At that moment, Rias, Akino, Koneko, and Aisha marched forward in a square formation, coming to a halt near the center of the courtyard. After a brief silence, the Emperor asked, where is your mistress? She is arriving now, Rias answered, pointing slightly upward. She wished to introduce herself in a manner that reveals her true nature. The Emperor raised an eyebrow as Lacan looked up first. Rosaline descended from above, landing gracefully and silently without disturbing a single grain of dust on the ground. The official stood frozen at the display of her shimmering golden wings and tail. Lacan studied the landing spot intently. She left no mark on the ground at all. So that is why I can see her face clearly. She and her companions were never human to begin with. He glanced at her attendants and realized he could see their faces clearly as well. Rosaline retracted her wings and tail smoothly into her back beneath her dress, and Rias stepped forward to help her put on her outer robe. Greetings once again, Emperor, Rosaline said, offering a polite bow. The Emperor laughed heartily. I see what you meant by demonstrating your nature. But how will your attendants prove theirs? That is simple enough, said Rosaline. She took her mask from Rias as all four attendants unfurled their devil wings, with Akino extending her single fallen angel wing. A moment later, they folded them back out of sight. The Emperor laughed again at the sheer spectacle. That is certainly convincing, he said, easing back into his throne. Your table is prepared. Please be seated. An attendant gestured to an open table near Anshi, set apart from the Emperor's dais. Thank you, Emperor, Rosaline said, walking over to sit down with Rias standing behind her while her other attendants stepped back. Rosaline, Anshi whispered quietly, where is your food taster? I do not need one, Rosaline whispered back. I am immune to virtually all poisons, at least any that could be crafted in these lands. Anshi nodded in understanding. As the feast progressed, a dish of vinegar-marinated fish and vegetables was served. This is rather bland, Rosaline thought. She paused, noticing Lady Lishu's distressed expression. Is she terrified, or is it something else? Rosaline activated a sensory skill to observe immediate outcomes. I see. She has a severe fish allergy. The next course was served, a soup that tasted equally plain to Rosaline. However, she noticed Mao Mao's expression shift to pure delight, followed by sudden gravity. Mao Mao stood up. This soup is poisoned. She promptly turned and stepped away. Rosaline glanced toward Lishu's food taster. She was completely unaware. As a minister stepped forward to inspect the bowl, Rosaline positioned herself in front of him. It is wiser to have a soldier conduct the check than yourself. A valid point, the minister agreed, signaling a guard to test the dish. The test confirmed the presence of poison. Emperor, Rosaline bowed slightly. It would be prudent to conclude today's gathering here. Do you have any objections? I do not, the Emperor declared. And as this event concludes, let it be known to all present that Rosaline alone holds full authority to enter and leave the rear palace at will, matching the freedom granted to myself and my kin. I am grateful for this distinction, Rosaline replied. The assembled nobles and ministers were astonished by the Emperor's decree. Rosaline and Gaoshin gathered the poison bowl and its contents as the garden party came to a close. By the way, Gaoshin, Rosaline asked, where is Master Jinsha? Likely speaking with Mao Mao, Gaoshin answered with a quiet sigh. Rosaline giggled softly. Lead the way, then. I will join you. An attendant informed Gaoshin of Jinsha's location. This way, Lady Rosaline, he said with a bow. Rosaline put her mask on as they walked. Lady Rosaline, may I ask why you wear the mask at certain times and go without it at others? Gaoshin asked. It is quite simple, Rosaline explained. In certain environments, my unfiltered presence can cause discomfort or harm to ordinary people. The mask dampens that effect. I understand, Gaoshin said, pondering her words as they arrived at the room. Master Jinsha, I have arrived with Lady Rosaline. They entered to find Mao Mao vomiting into a wooden bucket after ingesting an emetic she had prepared. Oh dear, Rosaline remarked softly. After composing herself, Mao Mao requested that Lady Lishu and her food taster be brought in for a private discussion. Rosaline stood quietly off to the side. Hello, Master Jinsha, Lady Lishu said happily as she entered. It is wonderful to see you again so soon. Likewise, Jinsha replied. However, this lady in waiting requested a word with you. He gestured toward Mao Mao. Oh? Lishu asked, rubbing her arm. What do you need from me? Forgive me, Mao Mao said, reaching out to grasp Lishu's arm and pushing back her sleeve to reveal red hives. I see. You cannot eat fish. How did you know? Lishu asked in shock. Mao Mao explained her own severe reaction to buckwheat and noted that Lishu's sensitivity was far worse. Rosaline observed Lishu's skin, noting the hives were contained to her arms and legs before stepping forward. It is known as an allergy, Rosaline said. An allergy? Jinsha repeated. In your terms, it refers to something an individual cannot consume or handle safely, even though others can do so without issue, Rosaline clarified. I see, Jinsha said. Mao Mao issued a stern warning to Lishu's food taster about how such reactions could escalate to fatal levels, and Rosaline affirmed the danger. Rosaline then produced a small pouch. This contains a preparation designed to manage these exact reactions. May I ask what it does? Mao Mao inquired with keen interest. It is an anti-inflammatory compound that reduces the hives and swelling, Rosaline said, handing the pouch to Lishu. Take 2 pills every 6 hours until the hives clear completely. There are 12 pills inside. Thank you, Lishu said, taking the medicine. But why are you helping me? Rosaline offered a gentle smile. My role within the rear palace is to ensure that every concubine and servant can reside here in relative peace and comfort. Both Jinsha and Mao Mao observed the interaction. She treats her with the care of a mother watching over a child, they both thought. After Lishu departed, Jinsha looked at Rosaline. I pegged you more as a tactical strategist. I can be when necessary, Rosaline acknowledged. However, there is no honor or purpose in manipulating a young girl. I must return to my lady, Mao Mao announced, bowing out. What are your thoughts on the matter? Jinsha asked once they were alone. Regarding the incident at the party. Rosaline asked, and Jinsha nodded. It is clear that Lady Lishu was the intended target, but her taster switched the dishes. Why would she do that? Jinsha asked. It appears to be targeted harassment, Rosaline explained. If I recall correctly, she was previously a concubine to the former emperor. Jinsha confirmed it with a nod. And in your court's tradition, it is considered highly improper for a former consort to return, particularly under the current emperor's house. That is a perceptive analysis, Jinsha admitted. Thank you for your insight. Rosaline bowed politely and departed, with Rias guiding her toward the Pearl Pavilion. Chapter 46, The Pearl Pavilion. After parting ways with Jinsha, Rosaline made her formal entrance into the rear palace proper. Passers-by along the walkways were transfixed by her ethereal appearance as she traveled north toward the Pearl Pavilion. The structure was somewhat smaller than the residences assigned to the 4 main consorts. The ground level contained a reception hall, an administrative office, private quarters for her attendants, and open common areas. The upper level was reserved exclusively as Rosaline's private bedchamber. Upon entering, Rosaline gestured to her bracers. Aquino, verify the arcane sigils embedded in the structure to ensure they remain stable if I remove these. Aquino smiled. Exercising extra caution today? Very well, I will inspect them. She turned to survey the building. When were you planning to inform us? Aisha asked. Inform you of what? Rosaline replied. That we are traveling with an avatar body rather than your true form, Ria stated. Oh, that, Rosaline said, taking a seat on a wooden bench. I simply have a minor concern. Which is? Koneko inquired. Whether this realm can physically sustain my primary existence and complete conceptual presence, Rosaline murmured, gazing out the window. Rias looked stunned for a moment before lightly tapping Rosaline on the head. Don't be ridiculous. This realm already supports 8 true dragons, including your avatar here. It contains a portion of your concept without issue. It can handle you. Rosaline rubbed her head softly. Perhaps, but 2 complications remain. First, I am technically under a binding seal. Second, well, that matter will resolve itself within a year or 2. Understood, Ria said. Aquino returned shortly after. The sigils are perfectly placed and aligned precisely to specification, she reported with a brief bow. They will hold comfortably. Excellent, Rosaline said, unbuckling the braces from her wrists and ankles. Now, where is the report regarding the battle from earlier? Did events unfold as anticipated? Yes, Ria said, summoning a small stack of documents. Rimuru engaged and defeated the Orc Lord, who had evolved into the Orc Disaster. The regional alliance should form within a few days. The primary anomaly was Sephra's interference, along with Shizu's rapid tail manifestation from 1 to 3 over a brief span. That is a significant development, Rosaline noted. How is her condition? Stable, though she remained unconscious as of 3 hours ago, Rias reported. And Sephra's whereabouts? Unconfirmed, though reports indicate she is coordinating with the Harlequins and Yuki, Ria stated. Additionally, William was spotted near the perimeter of the battlefield. I see, Rosaline pondered. Did Black Rock Shooter intervene? Yes, Kuro took action, Rias confirmed. Did she deploy anything beyond her blade? Rosaline asked. No, though she was wearing your protection amulet, Rias replied. Good. My lady, Koneko spoke up, why are you taking such care to keep Shizu alive? Rosaline smiled faintly. It is one element of a larger strategy set in motion decades ago. With Shizu alive, her disciple will not be driven by her loss to attack a vital key piece on this board. Other forces may attempt to exploit her altered state, but the ultimate outcome will diverge from the original path. Why go through such complex arrangements? Rias asked. You could easily reshape the entire structure to your liking. Where would be the challenge in that? Rosaline countered smoothly. I enjoy an unpredictable variable, even if it introduces a modest risk. The following day, after Mao Mao finished explaining how Lady Lishu was being mistreated by her attendants, she returned to her routine duties. Later, she met with her friend Xialan, bringing along leftover delicacies provided by the other ladies in waiting. So, Mao Mao, did you receive any hairpins at the party? Xialan asked eagerly. A few, Mao Mao answered casually. Xialan's eyes lit up. That is fantastic, Mao Mao. That means you can request temporary leave from the rear palace. Mao Mao immediately placed her hands on Xialan's shoulders. Tell me everything you know about that. Xialan explained that a hairpin presented by a gentleman could serve as a formal request to sponsor a servant's temporary leave outside the palace walls. I see, Mao Mao said. Thank you for the information. She returned to her quarters to review her options. Let me think. I received 2 from men, though one is a eunuch, and the other, let me check. She examined her collection and was surprised to find 5 hairpins in total. I remember Jinsha's, Lady Lihua's, and that official's. But she picked up a hairpin crafted from purple crystalline stone with a subtle dragon design. I do not recall receiving this one, nor do I recognize who uses this material. She decided to seek Lady Gyokuyu's advice. Upon reaching the main parlor, she realized a visitor was already present. Forgive me, my lady, Mao Mao bowed quickly. I did not realize you had company. It is quite fine, Mao Mao, Lady Gyokuyu welcomed her. Lady Rosaline simply stopped by to introduce herself. I see, Mao Mao said, holding out the purple hairpin. I realized I had this in my collection, but I am uncertain who crafted it or brought it. Let me see, Gyokuyu inspected it. I am unfamiliar with it as well. Do you recognize it, Lady Rosaline? Yes, Rosaline replied calmly. It is mine. Oh, Gyokuyu remarked. I presented it to her during our meeting following the garden party, Rosaline explained. You must have been distracted at the moment. Forgive my oversight, Mao Mao said. No harm done, Rosaline assured her. Why were you inquiring about it? Mao Mao summarized the custom Ciel had described to her. Lady Gyokuyu, does this empire observe that specific custom? Rosaline asked. Gyokuyu offered a subtle giggle. What custom do you mean? I will take that as confirmation, Rosaline sighed softly. Mao Mao, I would advise against using a gentleman's hairpin for such a request. May I ask why? Mao Mao inquired. Understand that what I am about to share may sound unusual, as it concerns details I rarely discuss, Rosaline noted. Both Gyokuyu and Mao Mao listened attentively. This sounds like a matter requiring discretion, Gyokuyu thought. Centuries ago, I resided in a realm with a similar custom where presenting such tokens signified a formal betrothal between palace staff and outside officials, Rosaline explained. If the same principle applies here, it carries significant implications. I see, Mao Mao said quietly. Why the initial hesitation regarding your past? Gyokuyu asked curiously. Rias cleared her throat lightly. Lady Gyokuyu, my mistress prefers not to dwell on her true age. She did mention centuries ago. Rosaline flushed slightly. If I may ask, Lady Gyokuyu said gently, how old are you? Well, Rosaline said, shifting slightly, if my memory serves, roughly 8 or 9 millennia, give or take a century or two. I understand a century, but what is a millennium? Gyokuyu asked. It refers to a span of 1,000 years, Rias clarified. My goodness, Gyokuyu murmured in wonder. To live for so long, that explains the depth in her eyes. After offering a few more suggestions, Rosaline took her leave. Several hours later, the Emperor arrived for private tea with Lady Gyokuyu. I heard Rosaline introduced herself to each of the consorts today, the Emperor remarked. Yes, she did, Gyokuyu replied. Her visit was remarkable, though I find myself feeling a bit of sympathy for her. Sympathy, the Emperor asked, surprised. During her visit, one of my ladies asked a question, and Rosaline revealed her age, Gyokuyu explained. And what is it? She did not give an exact figure, but she estimated it between 8 and 9,000 years, Gyokuyu said. She even introduced a term for it, a millennium, meaning 1,000 years. I cannot fathom living through such an expanse of time, or carrying everything she must have witnessed. The Emperor quietly reflected on the scale of Rosaline's existence. Chapter 47, Prelude to War. Inside the meeting hall, Rimuru pondered his next steps. Sue. Yes, my lord, Sue answered, appearing instantly. I want to secure an alliance with the lizard men, but I prefer not to deal through Gabiru, Rimuru instructed. Can you lay the groundwork? I will depart immediately, Sue replied before vanishing. Now, who should make up our main force? Rimuru thought. Benimaru, Hakuru, Sue, Anshin, certainly. But who else? As he pondered, Shana walked into the room. Deciding who to bring into battle? Shana asked. Yeah, Rimuru said. I know I am bringing the Kijin, but I am undecided on the rest. You should include the Goblin Riders as well, Shana suggested. Take about half of them, while the rest remain to defend the village. And bring Shizu as well. Wait, why Shizu? Rimuru asked in surprise. She is a former veteran adventurer, and she has been sparring with Hakuryu and me, Shana explained. She is a capable combatant. I see your point, Rimuru said as Shana turned to leave. Can I ask you something before you go? Sure, Shana replied, looking back. Rimuru shifted into his human form, his expression turning serious. What is your actual motivation for recommending Shizu? What do you mean? Shana asked smoothly. Is this kid exceptionally perceptive, or just naturally cautious? I know you and Shuten previously served the same master, Rimuru stated. I am not entirely sure where your loyalties lie now. Oh. Shana placed a finger to her lips. Sometimes it is wiser not to overthink such matters, Rimuru. So you are still working for them, Rimuru concluded, quietly gathering magicules for a spell. In a blur of movement, Shana appeared directly before him, pinning him to the table. Do not attempt that, she advised calmly. You already know that will not end well for you. Hey! Rimuru protested, attempting to shift forms to slip away, only to find his magicules suppressed. What is happening? Notice, your form is currently being suppressed by Shana's magicule output. How? Notice, mechanism currently unknown. Impressive effort, Shana remarked. Even in a tight spot, you do not yield easily. I simply wanted an honest answer. Rimuru said, his tone sharp. Wait, that is all you wanted? Shana asked in mild disbelief. She sighed, released her grip, and stepped back. Rimuru stood up as the magicule pressure dissipated. I need to know whether you are truly an ally or not. Shana burst into light laughter. My master was right about you. You are hilarious, Rimuru. Hey! Rimuru frowned as Shana wiped a tear from her eye. After composing herself, Shana spoke plainly. The only thing you need to focus on is protecting your people. I am here of my own free choice. I am under no binding orders from my master, and even if I received any, I retain the freedom to decline. That is all I can share for now. Explain what you mean, Rimuru pressed. Normally, we operate in pairs, Shana explained. The only exceptions are personal attendance. Otherwise, we are free to act as we choose between requests. So right now, you are between requests? Rimuru asked. Shana nodded. Precisely. And before you ask, no, Shuten is not my assigned partner. Mine is currently, well, likely in the kingdom of Fulbrosia. Fulbrosia? Rimuru repeated. Where is that? East-southeast of here, if I recall, Shana said. I have grown fond of this town, so I will help defend it for now. Rimuru exhaled slowly. All right. I will trust you for now. As Shana walked out, Rimuru stared at the door. Why is her master taking such a personal interest in me? Deep within the lizardfolk caverns, the chieftain agreed to the terms of the alliance Sue presented. Before taking his leave, Sue subtly warned the chieftain about underlying seeds of dissent within their ranks. Thank the heavens, the lizardfolk chieftain exhaled in relief once Sue departed. It seems there is hope for us after all. Why do you say that, father? Asked the guard captain. If a warrior as formidable as that Kijin serves another, the chieftain reasoned, their leader must possess truly extraordinary power. Elsewhere in the great forest of Jura, Gabiru slowly regained consciousness following his battle. Laplace appeared before him, recounting rumors of the Orc Lord and implying that the chieftain might lack the strength to handle the threat alone. However, Laplace deliberately omitted any mention of the Orc Lord's terrifying unique ability. Driven by ambition, Gabiru rushed off. Good luck, Gabiru, Laplace called out cheerfully. A quiet giggle sounded from the branches above him. You manipulate him effortlessly, a woman said from the canopy. Ah, Laplace looked up. I was unaware you were nearby, Sephra. I assumed you were accompanying the Orc army. I was, Sephra said, dropping down gracefully from the tree. Then I sensed your presence and decided to see what you were orchestrating. Simply ensuring all the pieces move into position, Laplace said with a theatrical bow. That being said, we have a minor task for you. And who is the target? Sephra asked smoothly. You already have a fair idea, Laplace replied. Do not worry, Sephra smiled faintly. I already have a plan in motion. She dissolved quietly into the shadows of the forest. Splendid, Laplace murmured, vanishing an instant later. At the monster village, Rimuru finalized his strike force. He decided to lead Benimaru, Sue, Shun, and Hakuru, accompanied by half of the goblin riders, Shizu, and Ronga. Shuten, Shana, and Shuna remained behind to secure the village perimeter. All right, everyone, let's move out. Rimuru commanded. Right, the group shouted in unison as they set forth. Back at the village, Shuten approached Shana. I heard you and Rimuru had a brief disagreement earlier. Yeah, Shani acknowledged smoothly. He does not entirely trust me yet, but that is understandable. Who do you think was sent to intervene? Shuten asked. Shana smiled subtly. Out of everyone available who could step in without drawing attention. I can think of one person in particular. Then we are thinking of the exact same person, Shuten replied with a nod. Chapter 48, Battle and Interference. A few hours before the orcs reached Lake Sis, Sephra appeared in the Orc Lord's camp and walked up to the commander. Nice to see you again, Orc Lord, said Sephra as she entered. He was a towering beast of an orc with massive muscles and a prominent pot belly. His armor had merged directly into his skin, and his long, rigid, pointed ears along with the large red jewel on his forehead made him appear to be wearing a crown. Ah, said the Orc Lord. Lady Sephra, what is it that you need this time? Oh dear, straight to the point, said Sephra. That is what I like about you. I need to borrow my usual 5 orcs. And your payment? Asked the Orc Lord as Sephra pulled 5 wyvern creatures from her storage skill. As promised, 5 lesser dragon corpses, said Sephra. She turned to leave as the Orc Lord began consuming them. Wait, called out the Orc Advisor. What is it? Sephra asked, stopping to look back at him. What are you planning? Asked the advisor. Nothing much, said Sephra. Just having some fun and helping your group as well. I do not believe that for a second, said the advisor. Then you are not stupid, said Sephra with a slight grin as she began walking away again. Keep your head on your shoulders. I would hate to see someone like you get snuffed out too soon. As Sephra departed, the advisor remained silent. She was a complete enigma, but it was obvious she was hiding a large portion of her true strength. During all the battles she fought alongside them, she never used magic like other Magian, relying solely on her sword and shield. During the attack on the ogre village, she fought the chief by merely toyed with him like a game, then let those 5 orcs eat him alive after he was exhausted. Sephra walked to a section of the camp where 5 orcs wearing blue bands on their plate mail were gathered. Hey boys, said Sephra. Ready for another party? Oh, said one of the orcs. Lady Sephra, it has been a while. Yeah, said another orc. And what do you mean by party? I have another fun target for you 5, said Sephra. And if you join in, you will get the first turn and some new power. Oh, shouted the 5 orcs. So, are you in? He asked Sephra with a grin, already knowing their response. Of course, all 5 orcs shouted together. As Rimuru and his party headed for Lake Sis, Sue notified him that a lizard man was fighting a higher-level orc and requested permission to save them. When they arrived, the fight was already over, leading to an alliance between Rimuru and the lizard men. They also learned of Gabiru's coup in the clan. All right, let us hurry, said Rimuru. Sue, can you rescue the lizard man chieftain? With ease, Sue replied, departing alongside the chieftain's daughter. When they reached the main battlefield, events proceeded normally, with one major exception where Shizu was stationed. As she was fighting a regular orc, a stronger orc wearing a blue band suddenly struck at her with the flat side of his cleaver, sending her flying several feet back. Why would this orc strike me with no malice using the blunt end? Shizu thought in confusion. As she landed, another orc wearing a blue band suddenly emerged from the ranks and did the exact same thing. This time, Shizu blocked the blow with her blade. They are intentionally leading me away from the group. Hey, I need. Shizu started to call out, but a third blue-banded orc appeared and struck her with his shield. Darn it! Why has no one noticed yet? She glanced toward Rimuru and saw a small bubble of water creating a total blind spot right where she was standing on the ground. Is this entire clash planned? As she landed, she felt the space around her shift entirely. What just happened? She blinked, and all the surrounding orcs, except for the 5 wearing blue bands, had disappeared. Damn, said one of the orcs. Took you long enough, my lady. Unfortunately, it took a while to set up this barrier so they would not see or sense me, a woman's voice said from behind Shizu. What is this? Shizu tried to turn her head, but the overwhelming aura radiating from the woman immobilized her. This power, is she like Leon? No, she is even stronger. I cannot believe such a weak person interests my old man, the woman said, kicking Shizu squarely in the side. Shizu tumbled across the ground and finally caught a glimpse of her attacker. The woman wore a featureless mask, her deep blue hair reaching down to her knees, and held a short sword and shield. Shizu quickly realized both weapons were constructed entirely of water. What did she mean by old man? Shizu regained her composure, stood up, and pointed her sword at the masked figure. If she is using water, I have to burn hotter than the water to destroy it. She coated her blade in intense flames and launched an attack. As their weapons clashed, Shizu realized something fundamental about her own movements. Her body felt sluggish in the subtlest ways. That slight delay proved deadly as the woman landed small, precise cuts across her body. The injuries began to accumulate rapidly, and the woman's water blade and shield were continuously restored by manipulating the swamp water around them using her mana. After a minute of intense clashing, Shizu was covered in small cuts and completely exhausted. How do I beat her? I am surprised by your fighting spirit when you clearly have no chance of beating me, the woman said. She leaped into the air for a downward strike, but moments before the blow landed, time came to a complete halt. Tell me, Shizu, Amaterasu spoke from within her. Do you want greater power? Though after a short span, you will not be able to move or help for a while. Do it! Shizu demanded. Time slowly resumed as a burst of fire flared outwards. 2 new tails of light formed near Shizu's tail, and she charged at the woman. However, the newly awakened power vanished an instant later. Oh dear, Amaterasu murmured. Your body could not handle it, so it fizzled out. Shizu collapsed onto the ground, catching sight of a figure wearing a hooded cloak with a single star on the back appearing right in front of her. Sensing the sudden surge of power, the masked woman used a skill to leap backward instantly. Looking back at Shizu, she noticed the newcomer. Well, well, said the woman. I wondered who he sent instead of Shana. So it was you, Black Rock Shooter. I go by Kuro for now, Lady Sephra, Kuro replied, drawing her dark blade. The 5 orcs began to move, but Sephra held up a hand to stop them. So why are you here? Sephra asked, pointing her water blade toward Kuro. Hopefully not to help that woman. Something like that, Kuro answered smoothly. And to protect you. Oh. Sephra paused as she realized the true intent. I see. Always the doubting father. She let out a quiet sigh. What is she talking about? One of the orcs thought. Without warning, Sephra swung her blade, sending a sharp wave of water through the air that severed the heads of all 5 orcs simultaneously. Why, my lady? Was their final fleeting thought as their heads rolled into the mud. Sephra's water sword and shield dissolved into the marsh. Tell my old man something for me, she said. What is it, my lady? Kuro asked. If my children are not returned to me within 2 years, Sephra warned, I will destroy everything he has built. With those words, her physical form dissolved entirely into water. "Yes, my lady," Kuro replied. She vanished from sight an instant later as the surrounding barrier shattered. Near the edge of the battlefield, Shinsho stopped running as the dangerous presence she had been tracking suddenly vanished. What happened? "Oh, probably my sister getting out of there after protecting that woman," a man's voice called out from a nearby tree, startling Shinsho. Looking up into the branches, she saw someone who strongly resembled Erogon, though he had short silver hair, bright blue eyes, and carried 3 long swords the size of Odachis. "Who are you?" Shinsho asked as the man leaped down to the ground. "The name is William," he replied. "William Wolfsbane." "Wait, you are his son?" Shinsho asked in shock. William looked her over, analyzing her presence closely. "Yeah," William said. "I see, a miniaturized dragon core. How interesting. But you probably sensed one of my older sisters." "I see," Shinsho said, though something still felt off. "Wait, you have siblings." Chapter 49, Ancient History and Familiar Ties. The morning light began filtering down through the forest canopy as Shinsho stood in place, still processing William's casual revelation about his family. "Wait, I thought he did not have children," Shinsho said, rubbing her forehead as she tried to comprehend it all. William observed her reaction and realized something. Did he tell her anything about our old world? "Hey, can I ask you something odd?" William asked. "Sure, go ahead," Shinsho said, sitting down on a fallen log. "How much do you actually know about our old man?" William inquired. Shinsho paused to think before answering. "Well, I know that he is a true dragon who has lived for a very long time, and apparently he has children." "All right, and is that all?" William asked. "Yes, that is everything I know," Shinsho confirmed. "Okay," William said. He picked up a small stick and began drawing diagrams in the dirt. "To begin with, my father, Erogon, is the oldest of 3 brothers. When we arrived here, they became true dragons alongside my mother, Elena. Their names are Baroki and Zen. I have 2 older twin sisters who used to admire my father, but everyone is quite annoyed with him at the moment." Before naming his sisters, William looked up and saw that Shinsho was visibly confused and overloaded by the sheer amount of information. "I will wait until you process that." Shinsho took a deep breath. "So, if I understand correctly, that would make you and your sisters dragonoids, right?" William nodded. "Yeah. My sisters' names are Eldest and Sephra. Even though Sephra is the younger twin, most people assume she is the older one." "Oh," Shinsho noted. "And why is that?" "Eldest is even more carefree than Milim," William explained. "Though I have not sensed her presence in a while." "Then the presence I felt earlier was Sephra?" Shinsho asked, and William nodded in agreement. "Yeah, looks like her elemental affinity shifted to water instead of light, though light magic does not exist in this world in the traditional sense," William noted. "I see," Shinsho said. "Wait, but light magic does exist here." "Well, Sephra prefers using light magic offensively rather than for healing," William clarified. "Her nature does not align well with this world's version of light magic, but it matches water magic perfectly." "What about you and your other sister?" Shinsho asked. "You mean our magic affinities?" William asked. As Shinsho nodded, he continued, "Well, my oldest sister retained her dark magic affinity. As for me, I have an affinity with all types of magic." "That is impressive," Shinsho remarked. "Not really," William chuckled slightly. "As the saying goes, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. I simply make it work for my style." He pulled out a small glass vial containing a shimmering silver liquid. "Okay," Shinsho said, looking closely at the container. "What is that?" Her great sage skill immediately responded in her mind. "Notice, the compounds within the vial consist of mercury, blood, and multiple layers of intricate magic circles designed to construct an automaton." "Wait, can I replicate that?" Shinsho thought. Notice, due to the inclusion of blood within the automaton structure, replicating this specific spell design is unfeasible, as you possess no blood. Calculating alternative solutions. As Shinsho stared at the vial, she suddenly realized something. Wait, you are intentionally distracting me. Was it that obvious? William chuckled softly. Yes. You did not explain anything about your uncles, Buroki and Zen. Shinsho accused, pointing a finger at him. Fair enough, William said, standing up. Though we should probably move away from this area. They just concluded their meeting. Oh, all right, Shinsho said, following close behind. Why do I get the feeling this was planned all along? As William and Shinsho walked south of Lake Sis, William began explaining the nature of the true dragons and their underlying concepts. He detailed the first true dragon created in this world, Veldanava, and his concept of creation through stardust and star magic. Next was his eldest sister, Velzad, who embodied deceleration through her ice magic. Then came Velgrind, representing acceleration through her fire magic. Finally, Veldora embodied pure chaos through his storm magic. All of these concepts produced immediate, highly visible physical effects on the world surrounding them. However, when 4 true dragons and 3 dragonoids were brought forth into this world from their original realm, the dynamic shifted. Elena, William's mother, wielded the concept of instantaneous movement alongside her lightning magic. But the remaining concepts differed fundamentally, lacking a direct physical footprint. Buroki's concept was death, while Zen's concept was the in-between. William explained Zen's concept in greater detail due to its unique nature. Zen controlled the spatial transitions between distinct dimensions and boundaries. That does not sound like a traditional concept for a true dragon, Shinsho remarked. William laughed softly. Your perspective is a bit narrow, he noted. These concepts are not limited by physical constraints. What do you think a true dragon of transition can do to an opponent? Shinsho contemplated his words as they walked. If it is not limited by physical constraints, then, wait, does that mean? Reading her expression, William confirmed her thought. Your deduction is correct. My father mentioned that Zen possesses a powerful variant of degenerate called devolution, which allows him to reverse all forms of evolution. However, he can only activate it during peak conditions. Peak conditions? Shinsho asked. There are specific moments when his power reaches its absolute threshold, William explained. Then what about your old man? Shinsho inquired. As they reached the boundary of Lizardman territory, William cast a soundproof barrier around them both. What I am about to tell you must be kept under strict secrecy, William said seriously. Do you understand? Yes, Shinsho nodded firmly. His concept is... William started to say, before a slender hand rested lightly on his shoulder. Oh dear, a familiar voice echoed from a spatial portal opening behind William. I step away for a few days, and you decide to expose my secrets, dear son. William glanced back. Father. Erogon emerged from the portal in female form, wearing a dark kimono accented with elegant purple trim. Erogon glanced toward Shinsho, whose face was frozen in shock at the sudden appearance. Oh, it is just Shinsho, Erogon remarked softly. William easily removed Erogon's hand from his neck. So, why are you here? Oh, Erogon said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her sleeve. Can you deliver this to Hecate for me? I know you cannot stay near Fry for too long, or Milim will sense your presence. William examined the paper. Really? Wing combs. Shinsho shook her head in sheer bewilderment. What on earth is going on here? Chapter 50, Alliances and Reports. After the alliance was formally established between the goblins, ogres, lizardfolk, and orcs, Rimuru stepped outside alongside Trainee. Trainee, could you examine someone for me? Rimuru requested. It would be my pleasure, Trainee replied warmly, following Rimuru to the quarters where Shizu was resting. Shizu's breathing sounded heavy and labored. Oh dear, what happened to her? Trainee asked, inspecting her closely. That is what I want to figure out, Rimuru said. Sue materialized beside them. Master, I thoroughly surveyed the area where we recovered Lady Shizu. I found 5 slain orcs, though none bore burn marks. Additionally, 2 sets of unidentified footprints were present in close proximity. How close? Rimuru asked. Within blade's reach, Sue reported. However, the tracks vanished without a trace. Great Sage, do we have anything? Notice, insufficient information available to determine how the individuals evaded Sue's tracking. Great, Rimuru thought as Trainee concluded her examination. Well. Physically, she is stable, Trainee explained. However, it appears her body was forced into a staged evolution before her core was ready to handle it. So she is in an evolutionary sleep? Rimuru asked, and Trainee nodded in confirmation. Thank you, Rimuru said, and Trainee vanished into a gust of wind. Shortly after, Rimuru and his allies began their journey back to the village. As the party departed the marshes of Lake Sis, a human figure concealed by an invisibility spell stepped onto the empty battlefield. Once she was certain the lizard folk would not be returning to the area, she dropped the spell and pulled back her hood, revealing Lightus, the Saint of Water. She immediately began analyzing the terrain. This was where I lost sight of the target for those few minutes, Lightus muttered, carefully inspecting the water and soil. The residual mana levels match the battle with the orc forces, but there is an underlying hidden signature within the water. She drew her sword and plunged the tip into the mud in several spots until it struck something solid. There! Using the surrounding water in the soil, she manipulated the mud to lift the object to the surface. A metallic sphere, slightly larger than her hands, emerged from the ground. What in the world? Lightus said, picking up the sphere. Why is an orb of obscuring buried here? She cast a search spell to scan for matching mana signatures across the local area. The result was overwhelming, causing her to step back in shock. I expected 5 or 10, but there are roughly 50 in this immediate perimeter. This was no random attack. It was meticulously prepared before anyone arrived. Lightus systematically collected the spheres to verify her theory, carefully noting each coordinate. All 50 orbs were placed in a precise geometric circle, with the 5 dead, blue-banded orcs situated at the absolute center. There must be something significant buried at the origin point. She plunged her sword directly into the center of the pattern. The blade struck a massive object buried deep beneath the surface. Using her water manipulation, she raised it slightly to read its functional structure. This central orb acted as the primary power core, while the smaller outer orbs maintained the barrier field. After recording the complete magical diagram, Lightus thrusted her blade downward, shattering the core underground. This entire array was constructed specifically for an assassination plot. But why? She gathered the 50 outer orbs and secured them in her travel bag before establishing a telepathic link with her superior. Lady Hinata, are you awake? A moment passed before Hinata's voice responded, Lightus, I did not expect a communication from you this early. What is the status of the mission? It is ongoing, but I have made a startling discovery, Lightus reported. Speak, Hinata said, her tone shifting from groggy to sharp and focused. I believe the target was isolated during the battle using a perimeter field similar to our holy field, Lightus explained. I detected 2 non-orc signatures within the residual magical energy. One matched the output of an archdemon, while the other... Out with it, Hinata instructed. It shared a magical signature similar to Demon Lord Milim Nova, Lightus revealed. However, their affinity was rooted entirely in water rather than raw destruction. I see, Hinata noted. Return to headquarters immediately with what you have recovered. Yes, my lady, Lightus replied, slinging the bag over her shoulder and beginning her trek back toward Lubelius. As the telepathic connection severed, Hinata let out a quiet sigh. She had been asleep when the transmission arrived. So someone is actively targeting our teacher. But who stands to gain from her death? As Hinata put on her Holy Knight uniform, she continued weighing the possibilities. The most logical suspect would be Yuki, but why would he want his own teacher dead? She left her quarters and headed down the corridor toward Artoria's room. Reaching the entrance, she found Roy and Louis Valentine standing guard outside like sentries. "Sir Louis," Hinata called out. "Why are you both standing guard here?" "Lady Luminous is currently inside visiting Lady Artoria," Louis explained. "For how long?" Hinata asked. "Since last night," Roy replied. "But Lady Artoria fell into a deep slumber 3 days ago," Hinata said, confused. Before anyone could answer, the double doors burst open as Luminous Valentine came tumbling out into the hallway, landing upside down with a light laugh. "Lady Luminous!" Artoria called out from within the room, stepping through a cloud of dust. She was wearing a disheveled maid outfit. "How many times must I tell you not to try putting me in a maid uniform while I am resting?" Hinata looked at Artoria in her saber form and muttered under her breath, "It actually looks quite nice." Artoria immediately shot her a sharp side glance. "In any case, did you need something from me, Hinata?" "I would like your opinion on a recent report," Hinata stated. They moved to a private conference room while Artoria changed into attire more suitable for a holy night. "I still wanted to see you in that outfit a bit longer," Luminous teased, receiving a light head chop from Artoria in response. "To answer your question regarding whether someone from our group orchestrating this," Artoria began, "it is certainly possible. Based on the reports." She paused to structure her thought carefully. "Yuki seems like an easy conclusion. However, if my master wanted to accelerate events, he would do something like this, or worse." "Worse," both Hinata and Roy repeated. "My lady," Roy asked, "what could possibly be worse than an assassination attempt?" "A kidnapping, followed by rigorous pressure to force the immediate awakening of her latent power," Artoria said, taking a quiet sip of tea. "Though that remains his absolute last resort. What tactics would he employ if he chose to intervene directly in this conflict?" Luminous asked. "This is merely conjecture, but he would not involve himself directly in such a small skirmish," Artoria explained. "That being said, he would undoubtedly place safeguards." "Safeguards?" Roy questioned. "I do not think a true dragon would bother with measures like that." "His direct influence is subtle," Artoria noted. "The only demon lords aware of his true capability are the 3 ancient demon lords and Lady Luminous." "We are straying from the primary topic," Hinata interjected. "Do you believe Yuki organized this specific attempt?" "He may have played a peripheral role, but he was not directly involved," Artoria analyzed. "However, I have a clear idea as to who participated." "Explain," Hinata requested. "Remember the safeguard I mentioned?" Artoria said. "That likely aligns with the archdemon signature Lightus detected." "An archdemon serving as a safeguard?" Roy and Louis whispered in unison. "Does this individual possess a name?" Hinata asked. Artoria nodded. "In our previous realm, she was known as Black Rock Shooter." A sudden surge of dark energy swirled up from the floor behind Artoria, revealing a young girl appearing to be around 15 years old, clad in a dark hooded cloak. "It is an honor to hear from you again, Lady Artoria," the girl said calmly. Hinata, Roy, and Louis instantly assumed combat postures, but Luminous raised a hand to hold them back. "Quite bold of you to show yourself here," Luminous remarked. "Forgive the intrusion, but upon hearing my name spoken, I came to verify who called," the girl replied politely. "Did Master order you to observe Shizu?" Artoria asked, looking over at her. "Yes," Black Rock Shooter confirmed. "Shana and I were assigned to monitor her condition." "Then who launched the attack against her?" Hinata demanded. "I am unable to answer that question," Black Rock Shooter stated simply. "I understand," Artoria said. Black Rock Shooter gave a brief nod before vanishing without a trace. "Why did you allow her to leave so easily?" Hinata asked, her tone laced with frustration. You already know the answer, Luminous said softly, causing Hinata to turn toward her. Artoria nodded in agreement. There are only 5 people she actively protects: my master, his wife, and their direct descendants. Based on my master's records, only one individual exclusively utilizes high-level water magic. And who is that? Hinata asked. I must caution you, Hinata, she is far stronger than you, Artoria warned. She goes by the name Sephra, and by my calculations, her raw strength may exceed even that of Demon Lord Milim Nova. So she is not someone to be taken lightly, Luminous observed. And if her intent was to eliminate Shizu, she would have done so without hesitation. Artoria nodded solemnly. Indeed. Her actions were likely meant as a direct message toward my master.